Hey everybody, welcome back into Occupy Democrats. And in this breaking story, there's a notorious quote from that, kind of diminished guy with the little mustache back in the 20s and 30s from Austria and Germany. You may have heard of him. He started this thing called World War II over his atrocities. And that quote goes a little something like this: the bigger the lie, the more people will believe it. And in this breaking story, that pretty much sums up Donald Trump's entire life, and certainly both of his presidencies, because no matter what, the one thing he always was told by his father was never admit fault, never admit you're wrong, and just keep on repeating, and whatever it is you're doing, blame others for it. The bigger the lie, the more people will believe it. And you have to see this breaking story because everyone around Trump, especially after the elections on November 4th, are starting to realize the lie is crumbling, especially when it comes to the very baseline of politics, which was always, it's the economy, stupid. Here is his sycophant Besant lying to George Stephanopoulos.
Let's talk about affordability and inflation. That was one of the key concerns that voters said was on their minds as they were voting this Tuesday. It appeared to be the driving force in the elections. But President Trump is still insisting that prices are way down, even though last month's report showed inflation stuck at about 3%. Are Americans worried about inflation just wrong?
What we're not going to do is what happened under the Biden administration. Now we are starting to see prices level off, come down. Gasoline is down, interest rates are down, so mortgages are down.
The president says, he just had posted this morning that there's almost no inflation. The consumer price index is higher than it was in the beginning of the year. Electricity rates are rising. So are prices for coffee, beef, vegetables, televisions. And it's not just me. It's not just economists who are saying that. Your own Republican members of Congress are saying that.
And then just now, in an interview with Laura Ingraham, here he is again himself running his mouth in the same stupid way when it doesn't align with his narrative or his self-aggrandized egotistical belief of himself. He calls everything fake. The
economy is the strongest it's ever been. We're down on energy. We're down on interest rate. Interest rates are down.
Then why are people saying they're anxious about the economy? Why are they saying that?
I don't know that they are saying. I think polls are fake. We have the greatest economy we've ever had. We will have over $20 trillion come into our economy, and it's largely because of my election, but it's also largely because of tariffs.
So in this breaking story, understand that everyone around him understands and clearly gets the fact that he's stone cold full of it. The jobs report just came out, and we lost 50,000 more jobs. And this is after firing the person who's the head of the labor statistics so he wouldn't have to hear the truth. But in this breaking story, check out what is happening around Trumposphere and whether or not he's ever going to bother to listen until he finally realizes he's out of office. Check this out. Breaking news. Freaked out Trump aides trying to stop him pushing his favorite delusion. Panicked advisors to Donald Trump are reportedly urging the president to stop dismissing Americans' financial anxieties and insisting there is no cost of living crisis. White House officials have advised Trump not to brush off voter concerns about inflation and rising food costs and instead pivot his messaging to assure Americans that he is working to address these issues, administration officials told CNN. The backlash to Trump's handling of the economy was evident on November 4 when GOP and Trump-endorsed candidates suffered humiliating defeats in races across the country. The White House now fears the GOP could face crushing losses in the 2026 midterms if Trump continues to bury his head in the sand about voter economic fears. In quotes, "You can't convince people that their experience, what they're feeling at home, isn't reality," one official told CNN. Trump, whose net worth is estimated around $6.6 billion, has repeatedly rejected any suggestion that tens of millions of Americans are struggling financially under his administration. In an interview with Fox News' Laura Ingraham, broadcast Monday, Trump dismissed reports of a struggling economy as a con job pushed by Democrats and the media. When Ingraham pressed him on why polls consistently show Americans feel anxious about the economy, Trump replied in quotes, "I don't know that they're saying that. I think polls are fake. We have the greatest economy we've ever had." In a damning outburst in the Oval Office after the Election Day wipeout, Trump reportedly declared in quotes, "I don't want to hear about affordability," while pushing the misleading claim that a Thanksgiving dinner will be cheaper this year. In quotes, "The only problem is the Republicans don't talk about it," Trump added. The issue for Trump, however, is not only are many people struggling financially, but a majority of them blame him for their situation. A CNN SSRS poll published last week on the eve of the GOP GOP's disastrous election showing found that 72% of Americans described the economy as somewhat or very poor. 61% said Trump's policies, such as sweeping tariffs, have made conditions worse. Trump is reportedly aware that voters have concerns about the economy, but believes his messaging on policies like new tax breaks is not getting through. One White House official told CNN the president is, in quotes, frustrated he's not getting credit for what he's doing. One proposal being floated by the administration is to send Trump on a national tour where he can deliver economy-focused speeches, CNN reported. It is believed that ramping up his domestic travel will also help quell concerns that Trump is too focused on foreign policy during his second term and not addressing economic issues that affect Americans more. In quotes, the president's pro-growth policies of deregulation and energy independence are bringing down gas prices, food prices, and inflation, and Americans will continue to benefit, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, that would be Caroline Leavitt, told CNN. In quotes, trust in Trump. He created the greatest economy in his first term, and he's doing it again in his second term. The Daily Beast has contacted the White House for comment. Yeah, they reached out to the White House for comment, but they're not going to get one. Or Caroline Leavitt will stand up with her fabulous lips, according to Trump, and say something that once again is absolutely untrue, just like when she said and got questioned about voter fraud in California, and she said everyone knows there's voter fraud. It's just a fact. It's just a fact. It's just a fact. If you repeat it's just a fact enough, the bigger the lie, the more people will believe it. Except for the fact that when it comes to the economy, Donald Trump should remember, even though it's not a world he's ever lived in his whole life, when people actually have to pay for things every day themselves and they don't have a bank balance that has nearly $7 billion in it now, yeah, you might discover, Donald, you're wrong. You keep talking about interest rates, but there are people who don't have enough money to buy bread. So interest rates really doesn't come into play. You guys like and share the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay frosty.